fine. I have totally embraced the fact that I get to, that I have the ability to come to work and put on some ridiculous big ears and make a fool out of myself.
Hey everyone, welcome to Bright and Early, the podcast for people building early stage startups. I'm your host, Brian Ray. I talk to entrepreneurs, product people, designers, and marketing pros about their experiences during the early days to help you feel just a little less crazy. Today on the show, I'll be talking to Margaret Kelsey. Margaret heads up the brand and content team at Appcues, where she helped to triple blog traffic in just 9 months. She's also worked for InVision in content marketing and community management and done a ton of other amazing things. Margaret, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you. I saw the workshop that you did recently for Forget the Funnel. And it was absolutely fantastic and can't wait to hear you share a bunch of that with our audience as well.
Oh, thank you so much. It was really fun to be on there, and I'm sure we can have equally as the same amount of fun.
Yeah, it was fun to watch, and there was a ton to learn. Okay, before we dig in, can't wait to hear all of your thoughts about marketing and content marketing. But first, I have to ask, what TV show or book not named Game of Thrones are you obsessed with right now? So, do you have any that you'd like to share?
Sure. And don't get me started on Game of Thrones because I've been very frustrated over the last couple episodes, but we'll not go there. Yeah. I think my favorite recently is Julie Zhou has written a book called The Making of a Manager, What to Do When Everyone Looks to You, where she sort of profiles her early work as a manager and helps answer a lot of questions for new time managers. I've recently, over the last year or so, inherited a team of folks. And so I have a lot of questions and I've been consuming a lot of managerial books. And that one has been absolutely stellar. And isn't written from like 30-year manager that's looking back on their career. It's really, she's sort of in it and working through it herself. So I found it very, very insightful.
Yeah, that sounds great to get the perspective of someone who's like thick in it right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the other thing is, if we were to go to margaretkelsey.com, we could learn about your marketing expertise, and that's fantastic. We would also see some of your paintings. I used to be an art teacher. My degree's in art education, so I was so excited to see your artwork. It's beautiful. Will you tell us a little bit about it?
And thank you so much. I think that's so cool that you have the background as well. It makes sense for a creative career to sort of have that other dabble in creativity. In terms of my painting, I think the thing why I continue to do it and why I continue to, I think, love it is we all work on screens all day long. I work on a laptop, and at the end of the day, I shut my laptop and everything that I did that day is completely gone. It's not visible. It's out sort of in the ether. And unless you have a screen open, it kind of disappears. So I think when I paint, there's at the end of it this sort of physical embodiment, this craft embodied, that it's the struggle that you worked on. It's the process is all right there. And then you get to, if it's good enough, hang it on a wall. If it's bad enough, shove it underneath your bed for no one to see ever again. But either way, yeah, you get to hold it and see it, and then sort of see how those things change over time as well. I think another thing that I find really interesting about it is I like to paint both figure painting, portrait painting, and also landscape painting. And I realize that there's so much that you think that you see around in your day-to-day life that when you're painting and you have to double check that, like, do I actually see that, there's a nose visible or two eyes that they're the same size, or, foreshortening and that sort of thing. It's sort of meditative in that way where you really have to second guess what you're seeing.
Yeah. And forces you to analyze your perception and your perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. it really sort of humbles you in that way of the fact that we're probably walking around looking at the world and not seeing it as it truly is.
Right.
We're getting deep.
Yeah. Do you try to bring lessons and observations that you make about yourself while you're painting? Do you try to bring that into your professional life, or do you prefer to allow them to be completely independent of one another and just to be their own thing?
That's a great question. I don't know if I actively try to bring them together, but I think it's impossible to not bring that along with you. I think this idea that there's some sort of separation between work and life is in and of itself sort of incorrect. I think that you're living at work, and anything that you're learning at work, you can transfer to your life, and anything that you transfer from your life can easily transfer into work. I think it's really hard to sort of separate those two.
I tend to agree and think that when we're our whole self, either, doing some creative pursuit or a hobby, or when we're our whole self at work, when we can just embody who we actually are, we end up doing better anyway. So can you talk a bit about what you're working on these days, leading brand and content marketing over at Appcues?
Sure. So Appcues, I guess we can start off with what that is.
Yes,
we
please.
are a product-led growth platform. You can think of us as an experience layer that product folks can add onto their product, where non-technical people can create and deliver experiences really quickly without bothering their engineering team to do so. So that's onboarding walkthroughs, feature announcements, anything to really increase product activation, product engagement, retention. All of those things can be affected with Appcues and the experiences that folks can sort of quickly create and iterate on with the product. So right now I am leading our brand and content team. We have a content marketer, a video producer, and a marketing designer on that team. So we're really sort of the creative folks on the marketing team, which is really exciting. We're doing a lot of video work. We have 2 ongoing sort of content programs that we're in charge of, our Appcues blog and also Really Good UX. And a bunch of other exciting things in the work as well.
Yeah. And if somebody were to follow you on LinkedIn, there's a chance that they might see a video of you with wearing really giant ears.
Oh no! Yes. So that is our new series called Overheard in Product that we are translating into video as well. That is all due to Meryl, who is our new senior video producer that just joined us. And she ordered those on Amazon, and I trusted the vision of the video and hoped that it would stop people in their tracks to watch it. So it sounds like you got to see it.
Yes, I can tell you from personal experience, it at least stopped me in my tracks. So
okay, good.
So well done. No, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was going to say I left all sense of coolness in my 20s, so it's fine. I have totally embraced the fact that I get to that I have the ability to come to work and put on some ridiculous big ears and make a fool out of myself.
Yeah, you gotta have fun, and you have to be willing to make a fool of yourself. Something I learned when I was teaching is that to be an effective teacher, sometimes you just have to be willing to be the biggest fool in the room.
There you go.
And nobody thinks that a good teacher is a fool when they get on the other side of the lesson. So
there you go. I like that. That gives me some hope for that video.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I can't wait to see more. Hey everyone, it's Brian, and we'll get back to the interview in just a bit, but I wanted to let you know that Bright and Early is brought to you by Techstars Studio. Techstars Studio enables you to rapidly envision, validate, and launch disruptive new startups. Partner with the Techstars Worldwide Network to access entrepreneurial talent and a proven track record of helping the most promising startups succeed. For more information, visit techstars.com/studio. And if you decide to reach out, let them know Brian sent you. Something, Margaret, that I heard you say on that workshop that I had mentioned, and everybody should totally go and check that out as well. This was really compelling. You called some growth marketing gross marketing. I love that. Super pithy. It like resonates, rings true. I get what you mean. But as founders, we want growth, and some of the methods that are, might be a little bit abrasive. Sometimes the metrics actually work. So can you just kind of talk us through that? Like get us between a balance of, effective growth marketing on the analytics side, but we also don't want to be gross people. So what are the things that we can keep in mind to do great content marketing that isn't gross and leads to growth?
Yeah. So I'm glad that you clarified that too, that it's some growth marketing. It's not all growth marketing. But I do have a serious aversion towards that sort of growth side of marketing. And what I think it comes down to is that, I think folks forget that on the other side of the screen are real human beings. We oftentimes look at analytics dashboards and think, if I could just move that 2%, what would that mean for the entire funnel? Or if these pop-ups are working and getting us, let's say, they're converting at 5%. If I just added another couple pop-ups, I could bump that conversion rate. And I think we try to move the needle like that. It's really easy as marketers to want to hack it, as it were. But I really think the core of true growth comes from remembering that there are human beings on the other side and creating experiences that those human beings want to interact with and want to consume, and that grab their attention in a good way. Not saying that video with the big ears is a good way of grabbing attention, but
definitely was.
it's a different way of grabbing it, other than throwing up a pop-up or a screen takeover or something like that. So I think as a whole, without getting into lots of different tactics or sort of frameworks of thinking about how to stay away from gross marketing, which we can totally do, I think the biggest thing is just to remember that there are human beings on the other side, and to think of yourself as when you're getting marketed to, and how those experiences often play out, and how frustrated you yourself are with those. So kind of the golden rule of marketing, right? Do not market to others how you would not want it to be marketed to. But I think that's a great way to think about it. And also, I lost my train of thought, but there's more there.
Well, yeah. So I like what you're saying there. Remember that on the other side of this campaign is a human being. Even if they're in the largest enterprise, in business, it's still a person that is the buyer. And you hear that advice a lot of times from writers, to think about, think about a friend, or think about somebody that you have in mind that you're writing to. Mm-hmm. And it can sometimes be like less salesy or, full of buzzwords and whatever. Is that something that when you say, remember that there's a human on the other side, how do you and how does Appcues think through, do you have customer personas? Do you have avatars that you're thinking about? What's that look like practically?
Yeah, I think we do use customer personas sparingly, though, because I think it's easy to think that everyone falls into these sort of neat little boxes, which oftentimes they don't. A lot of times you'll find out that your audience or your consumer base tends to be more edge cases than your customer personas sort of allow for. So we definitely think of it like that. I think of it mostly as thinking about somebody specifically in this space, and how much context do they need, and how much can we imagine for our product specifically. Appcues is for a fairly technical person. It's for product teams and or even growth marketers. So it's somebody that has been around product for a while. they speak a certain language. And so we try to make sure that we're using the same words, the same language, speaking in the same tone as they would do. So part of that is really just being embedded within the community that you're trying to serve. I'm a big proponent of learning people's languages. I think as a marketer, it's really important to consume and read and be active in those communities and really understand what the broader community is talking about and thinking about. And that will only help you sort of clarify that writing and understand what to include and what you can probably skip out on to make it not super redundant or super boring, as it were.
Right. Yeah. I mean, getting the tone and the word choice right is so important. I'm sure that that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Something that I can relate to personally, and from talking to other folks in the same situation, I know that something that early stage companies struggle with is that early on you just don't have that many followers. You don't have that audience built up yet over time. And so it feels like it can feel scary or discouraging maybe to plan and launch a campaign. Like, we're going to do this, nobody will notice us. And the fear that those who do will feel like they're at a dead party, which could be even worse. So what would you say to companies who are still building their audience or don't have an audience yet? What mindset ought they be in as they design their campaigns?
I think that's a great question. I think my initial thought would be embrace it. I was on a podcast recently with Jay Acunzo about content marketing. Specifically, there's an agency called Animals with a Z. And Jay was likening them to sort of a speakeasy brand. And that's because they didn't do a lot of loud or showy marketing. And as a marketing agency, you would think that would be sort of rare or an interesting choice. But it was really based on the word of mouth of the agency itself. And I really loved that idea. I think a lot of us marketers trying to build a community or build the brand, we do think of those sort of vanity metrics of like, oh, if we could just have, if this could go number one on Product Hunt, or if this could be, if everyone in the world could know about this. But honestly, you don't need that. You need to have a small amount of people that really, really love you and are really passionate. So I think what I would recommend doing is really focusing on figuring out how to enable the small group that you have, even if it's only a couple folks, 5 folks, 10 folks, whoever it is, focus on enabling them to be able to share your message easily and with passion. I guess what I mean by that is, first is like kind of removing that friction of sharing that message. So, at InVision, we used to, when I was there and sort of setting up the blog and getting it toward sort of to be the flywheel that it is today, we really focused on having these beautiful click-to-tweet images or click-to-tweet quotes that would say something super insightful so people could just click on them and tweet them out. And this was back in the day before that was, I think, a common practice too. So it felt maybe a little bit more special there, but people would do it all the time if we picked the right quotes, because it was easy to just, click on it and then seem insightful. So that was like a quick little frictionless way to have that sort of naturally grow. The other part of that was sort of with make it easy. And then the other one is with passion. And I think that is really focusing on taking care of that small group of folks that you do have. Like, how can you make them so in love with your brand or your product that they're talking about you to everyone else they know? Like, how do you make it so easy for them to be brand ambassadors or to be sort of your first evangelizers? I have another story of when Casper first started. There were, I think, a brand new brand, the mattress brand, And we had bought, my husband and I had bought a mattress, and we were moving to a new place, and we had bought a king, but it wasn't going to fit into the new place. And it was, we were just over that sort of return period of time. I think we were a month or two over. And my husband called up and said, hey, is there anything that we can do? And they were like, oh yeah, sure. And they had us donate the mattress, and they sent us a queen, no charge, to our new address. And I have told that story probably like 200 times to a million different people, because I was so floored with like that experience. And I mean, the mattress is comfortable, but like that experience in and of itself, I wanted to tell the world about it. So I think those are two things that even if you have a small audience, focus on making sure that the people you do have are absolutely obsessed with your product or your company, and then figure out how to make it as easy as possible for them to share it out and to do that with ease.
Thanks. Yeah, that's all so good. I like what you're saying about just embrace that you're small. Don't try to hide that or appear larger than you are. If you have a small audience, then speak to them in a way that's like, you're in the know, like everybody else doesn't get it yet. Y'all are the early ones, and this is really cool. I really dig
and
that.
treat them really well. Like they're going to be the folks that when you're big, they're going to be the folks being like, oh, I knew them way back then, and bragging about that. So so you might as well encourage that behavior too. Yeah, exactly. They're the hipsters of your brand.
Yeah. So, so you mentioned a couple of great campaigns, and one that like something that always strikes me is the kind of content marketing campaigns that just nail it, and it's it when you see it. It's just perfect. And one that I think continues to kind of get acknowledged, even just won an award, is Wistia and the 1-10-100 campaign. It's like they show you what you could get done for $1,000, $10,000, or $100,000 for like a video shoot. And it's perfect because they are speaking in the medium of their customers, or like the way that are you following Justin Jackson on Transistor and like the Build Your SaaS? Oh well, yeah, it's the Build.
Oh, I haven't been.
Okay, it's super cool. So Justin Jackson and his co-founder John Buda, they are starting a podcast hosting SaaS company, and so they have a podcast about building the podcasting host company, podcast hosting company. So it's like, that just makes so much sense. And it's from the outside, it seems super obvious, but sometimes like when your nose is 3 inches away from the painting, so to speak, it's a little bit harder to see it. So how do you have any advice or for how, a founder or somebody who's like in the thick of their business, how to kind of take a step back and observe, this is the medium that we should speak with or speak through. This is the topic we should think about. How do you think about that?
Yeah. So I think about it in a couple different ways. I think that first, there's this idea of marketing market fit, which is what you're touching on, I think, right now, is sort of how is your audience? I love
that term.
Yeah, I can't claim it as my own, unfortunately. I thought I was making it up, and then I Googled it, and it has been used before. But if I could like claim to it, I would gladly do so. But so, yeah, this idea of marketing market fit. So I think we've already hit peak content. Like, I know people have been saying that for years and years and years, but I would tend to agree. Like, we have content marketing is a thing. Everyone agrees in that. And so everyone's making content and everyone's putting stuff out there. So I think the way that you break through the noise is with marketing market fit, and thinking through, what is your community thinking about? So that in terms of topic, how are they consuming the content? Are they voracious podcast folks? Are they, do they like to sort of binge videos? Do they prefer to sort of read long form content? Do they prefer to actually read like paper content and mark it up and that sort of thing? I think back to, I was talking with a restaurant SaaS, like a SaaS platform for restaurant companies, and they were thinking about their content marketing. And I just point blank asked them, I'm like, are your folks even like online reading blogs about restaurant life? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, then don't have a restaurant blog.
Exactly.
Like, think of another way to reach them. And so I think we as marketers have to be thinking about those things if we really want to resonate, and if we really want to expand those things. So I think marketing market fit is one. I also think, like, in terms of brainstorming, I have a lot of thoughts about creativity and brainstorming. I think one of the biggest recommendations I have, and this is whether you're brainstorming solo or with a team, is to be the first person to throw out bad ideas, but like write those bad ideas down and have them in like a shareable place, right? So if you're even brainstorming yourself in a doc, don't just like think through your bad ideas, like write those bad ideas down. The CEO of InVision, Clark Valberg, used to do this all the time. He would be the first one in the meeting. He'd be like, I have this idea. This is my bad first idea. And I think throwing that on the table shows yourself or your team that in this storming part, like none of these ideas are precious. Like, let's just like think about them. Let's just like let your mind put two things that are absolutely ridiculous together, and let's see where that takes us. And I almost like, I kind of personify good ideas as like little shy like creatures, right? Like, and they're rarely like the first to show up. Like, your good idea is never going to be like, oh, I need to brainstorm an idea. And the good idea is never going to be like, I'm here. But I think sometimes they'll come out of hiding, especially if they're in a list of bad ideas. So those bad ideas are actually very necessary and a really important part of the process. And your good idea will not come out without those bad ideas. So like, embrace the fact that there's going to be, a ton of bad ideas as well.
I love that idea of thinking that bad ideas are necessary to kind of give good ideas a place to emerge from. That's really great.
Yeah, I've never had a good idea that's not like a 20-1 bad idea to good idea. Like, I've never had more good ideas than sort of that ratio of bad to good.
Yes. No, that is really well said. The ratio is always in favor of the bad ideas, but you got to get them out there. Okay, Margaret, let's say that I had zero budget to invest in content marketing. I'm an early stage founder. I'm in the early stages. So I have no budget to invest, but I've got some time. So how would you recommend that I spend my time?
Yeah. So I think going back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, I would recommend embedding into whatever community you're trying to serve, whether that's your product or your service business, whatever you're trying, whoever you want your customers to be. I would get into Slack communities, or start following a bunch of people on Twitter, or showing up to in real life community events and ask a lot of questions and make friends, and like we said before, figure out sort of their language, what they're talking about, what they're worrying about, and then try to create content or that sort of marketing market fit to answer those questions, and using that language that you sort of picked up and learned, and those phrases and that sort of thing. You can easily kind of quickly create helpful content marketing or other marketing programs based on those learnings that you're having with that community.
Yeah. Get into the community, give first, teach first.
Yes.
And then, it'll come from that. I love it.
I think that's my favorite part about content marketing, is it's really sort of tapping into this human reciprocity. And I think that obviously there's a business goal tied to content marketing. I mean, there should be. I'm a firm believer that there should be business goals tied to content marketing, but
there's a conversion somewhere down the road.
Yes, but I think that there should always be this sort of selfless, helpful answering questions and furthering people's careers. And like, I would create those kind of content programs all day long, and then know that there will be a business case because of the fact that human beings are sort of this, believe in reciprocity. But you don't have to worry about it as much if your programs are really as useful as you want them to be.
So if I had a budget, let's say I'm getting some traction, and so I have less time to spend, but now I've got some money. If I had a budget of say $10,000 to invest in content marketing in the early stages, so how would you recommend that I spend that budget?
Yeah, and I'm going to give that like the worst answer you can ever give, and it depends.
That's the great answer. I give that one all the time.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends. It depends on the product that you're creating, the market that you're entering, the community you're trying to serve. I'm never going to be like, oh, spend $10K to hire a freelance writer to write for SEO. That might work if your product, if people are going to Google your problem that your product solves more often than they're going to like find about you in the wild. Like there is a case for writing SEO rich content and being that close today. There's also a case for like creating creating a community of your own. There's like on Slack or whatever it might be. I could make a case for spending that $10K budget in a plethora of ways, depending on the product you have, the market you're entering, the community you're trying to serve. And actually, I mean, since we got a little money, I would probably use that money to just continue that community work that we were doing before when we didn't have any money, of like making friends and embedding yourself in those free communities and like building those relationships, like taking those people out to coffee or to dinner to learn more about them. And then when you build those relationships with like maybe the community influencers or the folks that you would hope would one day use your product, then you can sort of spin that into this kind of community sourced content marketing programs where they could be writing articles for you or creating videos for you, or at least whispering in your ear about the things that they're dealing with in their day-to-day life that you can then create content out of. I think one of the sneaky things about that kind of community sourced content marketing is that you start to inherit their own credibility into your marketing program. So like if you're creating content with XYZ community influencer, by their very proximity or association with you, you're going to be seen more credible within that further community. So I would probably spend that money on those types of people rather than trying to hire a freelancer and spin out some cheap blog articles or something like that.
Yeah, I love it. Know your audience is the right answer in
always.
Both of
That's
those.
my answer to all of these questions.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's actionable too. Anybody can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Final thought here. As you know, working on a startup can make you feel a little nuts or crazy.
Oh wow! Yeah.
At sometimes, especially if you don't actively work on maintaining, some calm, peace of mind, some sanity. So are there any practices that you've found helpful that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yes, I have so many thoughts on this, and always happy if folks want to tweet at me and open up this conversation. I am very, very in tune with this, and it's something that I'm always working on as well. I think my biggest recommendation and something that I found super useful for me is taking time for whatever kind of thing makes you feel like your brain shuts off. For me, that's painting. For my husband, that's golfing. For some people, it's working out, meditation, whatever it might be. Whenever you can get into that headspace where you kind of feel like your brain turns off, prioritize that time. And I think something that I've learned as well is that nobody on earth will protect my time more than I can and should. So this is in terms of like if you're at a company rather than if you're but if you're a solo worker as well or a solo founder. But I really think that if you're at a company and especially early stage, there's always going to be demands of your time. There's always going to be folks like trying to get one more meeting in or one more thing or slip this in. And I think that if you have strong boundaries of knowing what things you need in your life to keep you energized and to keep you away from burnout, like you are the only one that can prioritize those things in your life.
Well said.
You might have a great manager that will like see you already starting to burn out and try to pull you back from it, but like nobody will do that at the stage that you can do it yourself.
Right. That's really great.
I do have another super nerdy thing.
Sure.
If you,
yes, please.
So this is, I'm sort of even embarrassed to be giving this piece of advice, but this is something that's really helped me throughout the year when I have good things happen to me, or people say nice things to me, or, I have a metrics win, or, we have a best day on the blog, or somebody's like good work on XYZ. I screenshot it and I save it to my desktop under a folder called kudos.
Oh my gosh, I love this.
And then every so often, if I'm having a bad day, I will go through and read all of the kudos that I've gotten. And it's very nerdy, but it really makes me feel better because
that is not nerdy at all. That is awesome. I don't know the exact number, but there's some study or something that's basically like, it takes, 10 positive affirmations to equal 1 negative piece of feedback.
I can see that. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that just kind of like resonates. That kind of just feels like truthy. Like, you definitely forget your wins faster than you'll forget like a hurt. That's so okay. So you get an email or like that really means something to you. You screenshot it, throw it into your kudos folder.
Yep.
I love that.
And I encourage the folks on my team to do that too. And some of them I think have, some of them probably are like, I have a silly person for my manager, but I really do think that looking back periodically on what you've already accomplished can give you the strength to then keep working at it. I think, like you said, oftentimes we ruminate on the negative thing, or we think like, oh, we're never going to get past this stage, or this feels like it's forever. And so going back and seeing like when the things that you take for granted right now maybe just came to fruition for the first time, or somebody complimented you on something that you had never heard before, but now you like have accepted into part of your psyche or whatever it might be. Right. Looking back on those things, I think can really be inspirational. I'm also very inspired by carrots and not by sticks at all. Like I am like, don't hold something over to me of like hold something over me and be like, oh, like that doesn't motivate me. I'm motivated by like nice things. Yeah. So anytime, like also, I guess, know your motivation strategy. I know there's some people that would get complacent by looking through all their kudos, but to me, that just gives me more fire to kind of go the distance.
Totally. I mean, it seems like it reminds you of when that affirmation or when that success was fresh too. Yeah. And like you relive it. There's a great quote that I'm terrible at living, but I love the quote, and it is, remember when all you ever wanted is what you currently have. And like what you were saying is that, as those things become normal to you, you kind of forget what it felt like when you first achieved it. I love that. So Margaret, kudos to you if you're encouraging your team. Oh yeah, hey, kudos. Kudos.
Screenshot a soundbite. I will add this to my folder.
It definitely sounds like you are a great manager to have if you're encouraging your team to do that. So thanks for sharing that. I love it, and I hope our listeners do too. So Margaret, thanks so much for your time. So finally, how can listeners find and follow you online? Where can we send them?
Yeah, sure. So you can follow me on Twitter at Margaret Ann K. It looks like Margaret Tank, which is embarrassing. I'm just telling my embarrassing secrets away. Yes, so it's actually Margaret Ann K. But you can follow me on Twitter or find me on, as you said before, my website's margaretkelsey.com. And yeah, always open to chat and to brainstorm things and to work through problems with any other sort of fellow early stagers here. So get in touch if you want to chat.
My guest today has been Margaret Kelsey. Margaret, you are a wealth of information and insights. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Couple of closing thoughts from me. after that interview, which I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I really appreciated Margaret's answer to the question of what if you're super early and you don't have much of an audience yet and you're kind of afraid about, launching to a thud or worse. And her answer was, well, just embrace who you are and talk to your audience and take care of them, sort of as if they are you are their pet band, like they're in on it early. I really liked that idea, and it kind of gave me the thought of, the metaphor of, a band that doesn't have any following yet, never playing any shows until they're certain that, 300 people are going to show up. That just doesn't work. You have to release a first thing and start taking care of and loving your audience early, even when only 4 people are showing up to the show at a time, and talk to those people as if, hey, yeah, look, we get it. There are only a handful of folks in the crowd right now, but we so appreciate you being in on this journey and listening to our story from day one. I love that as a concept, as a way of thinking about where you're at. The other thing I liked was the idea that good ideas are shy or can be shy, that like they need a crowd of bad ideas around them to emerge from that, and the idea that you got to share all your ideas, knowing that some of them are going to be bad, and the ratio is always tilted in the scales are tipped on the side of bad ideas, or whatever analogy is better there. I like that idea of good ideas being shy and needing a place to live and emerge from. That's something I want to continue to think about. And the final thing, I love this idea of a kudos folder. I'm definitely going to start one of those, just as simple as a folder on your desktop that you drop screenshots into and revisit it from time to time. I love that. If you create a kudos folder, or if you've got other thoughts on how I can make this show better for you, topics you'd love for me to cover, guests you think that I should reach out to, please let me know. This show is yours and I want to make it great. You can find me on Twitter. I am B Ray. That is, let's do colors this time. B as in beige, R as in red, H as in honeydew, E as in emerald, and A as in aqua. I would love to hear from you there. Let me know what you think. And until next time, thanks for listening. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Listen, if you dig this show and you want to hear more, then please head on over to Apple Podcasts or Google Play and leave a review. It really is the best way to help other people find the show, which is great for my guests, which is great for the show, which then makes it easier to attract more guests. You see where this is going. So if you're listening and you think other folks should be, please leave a review. And if not for me, then do it for the extremely cool group of people who've agreed to be the first guests on my show, knowing that it's brand new with very little to offer them. Jane Portman, Claire Solentraub, Gia Lottie, Margaret Kelsey, Janelle Allen, Andrea Hill, and by the time you hear this, plenty more. These are all really busy people who already have an audience of their own and were so gracious to me when I said, hey, I'm launching a brand new podcast with no listeners, and here's what it's about. Are you game? And they said yes. So if not for me, do it for them. Leave a review, tell a friend, spread the word. And until next time, I'm Brian Ray.